All right, it's been a minute since your boy has done one of these videos, but we are back to tier rank our top 20 dynasty wide receiver rankings here at the Fantasy Football Fellas. We're figuring out where are we putting these rooks? How are we balancing age and opportunity for some of these players? How in the world are we supposed to deal with the grossness and disgust of 2023 for some of these players? We'll answer all those questions right here in this video, starting right now. So we're going to start here in the S tier. We're going to work our way down to the D tier for our top 20 wide receivers. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb all make up the S tier. I'll try and breeze through this, but some of the stats on some of these guys are just astounding, and it's worth at least chatting about. So Justin Jefferson, you could have these three in any order, by the way, but Justin Jefferson for me is still at the top at 8 fully healthy games last year. He was averaging 127 receiving yards per game. It's a 17 game pace of 2,165 yards. Okay. It did not matter who this man's quarterback was. If it was Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, Kirk Cousins, he only had 67 less receiving yards in the second half of the season when playing with the combo of Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins compared to Kirk Cousins in the first half of the season. Just mind-blowing, okay? And Kevin O'Connell's offense, we know it runs through Justin Jefferson, no matter if it's Sam Darnold, J.J. McCarthy. We know J.J. is going to get his, especially with T.J. Hawkinson out to start the year. So Justin Jefferson, clear away in the S tier. He's my one still, but again, you could put Jamar Chase there, right? It feels like you got to give him a pass on last year, considering Burrow only played 9 healthy games, and like the Bengals offense, if you remember to start last year, it was quite literally a disaster. Player number 1 of grossness of 2023. I think we give a pass to Jamar Chase on that. He still saw a career high 145 targets in 16 games, still top 12 targets, receptions, receiving yards. So for an offense that will be fully healthy this year, a potential departure of Tee Higgins as well. This is no debate that Jamar is still an S tier player, and this should be a very big bounce back season for him. Now, CeeDee Lamb, he doesn't have to bounce back from anything, okay? He put up a career year last year, obviously, and we were all wondering if he had that elite tier jump in him, and it's safe to say we got our answer, right? I mean, he's 8th in first downs per route run, 6th in yards per route run, 2nd in receiving yards, and here we go, a whole slew of firsts. First in targets, first in receptions, touchdowns, yards after the catch, red zone targets, total route wins. He is an S tier wide receiver at this point. There should be no debate about that. And when you look at what the Cowboys did this offseason to change their offense, they did quite literally nothing. Okay, they brought back Ezekiel Elliott. That's not going to change anything between Dak and CeeDee Lamb, right? So this could be another massive Dak and CD season down in Dallas. He belongs in the S tier here, no question. Moving down to the A tier now. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown. We got Marvin Harrison Jr. First rook slides in here. A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, and Garrett Wilson. It might be more appropriate, honestly, to put Amon-Ra in his own tier, because when I went back and looked at his 2023 season, I was actually shocked at how good it actually was. 164 targets. That was the 5th most in the league. He was targeted on 29.2% of his routes. That was the 5th most. 119 receptions was the 2nd most. 3rd most receiving yards was over 1,500 yards. Yards per route run, he was 7th. 4th in first downs per route run. I'm going to bring up that stat quite a bit on this episode. Ryan Heath over at Fantasy Points has great articles on this. I wish I could just link that right here, but you know what? I'll put a link down in the description of this video if you want to go read any of his articles on yards per route run, first downs per route run, and how that's actually a predictive metric for fantasy football. It's a phenomenal article. Please go read it. But you look at what the Lions did this offseason, right? They didn't add anyone to compete for targets with Amon-Ra. Maybe, Sam Laporte if we want to account for a step up. But the big thing for Amon-Ra is that this might actually just be his last significant leap, because I think where you go from here in his role is to see a 2021 Cooper Kupp-esque season, right? A Triple Crown-esque season where it is just head and shoulders above everybody else. And I just don't think we're going to get to that. I would love to be wrong on that, but Amon-Ra is head and shoulders above almost every other player in this tier. The question is can he take one more leap? And he's got a leap for the moon at this point. And I just don't know if he's going to get there. But Marv is on a whole different playing field, right? We have no sample size in the NFL. Fresh in Arizona, but honestly, probably the perfect destination for Marv to end up. He's the clear-cut wide receiver one for Kyler. Honestly, there's very little reason why he shouldn't command a top 12 target share off rip. This is a team that will be fine, not great. They'll be in games, but not ahead enough to abandon the pass and just resort to the run to burn clock. And Marv has everything you want in a top prospect, right? 6'3", 202 is prime. You love the young breakout age. He ran at least 3.18 yards per route in his final 2 years at Ohio State. I'm not going to berate the point. Marvin Harrison Jr. belongs in the A tier despite having seen nothing in the NFL. He's just that good of a prospect. He belongs here. Now, whether you want to put him ahead of A.J. Brown, Puka, Garrett Wilson, I'll leave that up to you. But A.J. Brown signed a massive 3-year extension. Obviously, this offseason worth $96 million. I hope you remember the historic stretch that he had last season of 125 plus receiving yards in 6 straight games. This offense will improve as well as they're not running a high school level offense anymore. The film was just disgusting on the offense that they were running last year. So Kellen Moore comes in. He'll run a much better offense. A.J. Brown is just fine. I think we want to sit in the grossness, right, of the second half of last year, the disappointment that was. But he's just fine. Okay. A.J. Brown is just fine. He belongs in the A tier. He's still an elite fantasy dynasty wide receiver. He's an elite fantasy wide receiver as a whole. Now, Puka Nacua, he broke onto the scene last year. We all know that. Broke the rookie receptions and receiving yards record. 105 receptions was 8th most in the league last year. 1,400 receiving yards was the 4th most, 1,425 to be exact. And I think as much as we want to hold on to Cooper Kupp's 2021 season, right? Puka's the wide receiver one for the Rams now. No question. Cooper Kupp is aging. He's been dealing with injury. It's Puka's wide receiver room now. You're not quite sure how big the sophomore leap is going to be because that being said, I don't think we can write off Cooper Kupp entirely, but it's questionable how big of a leap he's going to see. But undoubtedly, if he can even repeat last year, he is a top 7 dynasty wide receiver. No questions asked. Now, Garrett Wilson, he did not have a fortunate of a season as Puka Nacua. A season from hell for Garrett Wilson. We'll call it that, right? Loses Aaron Rodgers to an Achilles tear right off the bat. He gets zero consistency or frankly productivity out of the rest of the quarterbacks the Jets decided to trot out last season. Now, the good news, though, of that is that he still saw a massive amount of targets. 168 was 4th most last year. He had a 30.1% target share. He had over 1,700 air yards, the 7th most in the league. His air yard share, my gosh, 42.7%. That was 4th most in the league. So Garrett Wilson, still very clearly the target hog here. You do add Mike Williams in free agency. You bring in Malachi Corley via the draft, but neither will overtake Garrett Wilson as the alpha in this offense. They needed complementary pieces around this man to make him more efficient, to give him a chance. Okay. Garrett Wilson is going to be just fine once he gets Aaron Rodgers back. Now, the future is a little bit hazy of what's after Aaron Rodgers, but as for now, we're looking at 2-3-year windows in Dynasty, and I think Aaron Rodgers can give us 2 more seasons to make Garrett Wilson a worthy candidate of being in this A tier. So we're in the B tier now. This is where it is a vastly different group of wide receivers, right? You got Tyreek Hill, Malik Neighbors, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Drake London. Tyreek Hill, we know who he is at this point with the Miami Dolphins. We're not going to berate this point, right? The big thing with him, though, he's 30 years old. He's talked about retiring after the 2025 season. You have your 2-year window with him, but after that, that's it. That might be all you get with him. So that's what keeps him in this B tier, despite, him being on the same level fantasy-wise as, the 3 guys in the S tier, Jefferson, Jamar, CeeDee. He's obviously in that group for this year. But when we're playing Dynasty, again, as much as we're looking at 2-3-year windows, the window is almost entirely shut after those 2 seasons. So that's what keeps Tyreek in this B tier, just to explain it from a Dynasty perspective. Now you get Malik Neighbors, though, right? Fresh blood into the league. We can all piss and moan that he didn't end up with the Chargers, attached to Justin Herbert. But frankly, I think we're kind of overblowing this Giants situation, how bad it actually is. I don't think it's leaps and bounds worse than the Chargers, especially if Greg Roman is running the Chargers offense. He does get Brian Dable, who, keep in mind, had to work with undrafted free agent Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlass, throwing to Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Jalen Hyatt, right? Brian Dable was given a singular uno rotten lemonade to try and make lemonade with last year. What are we expecting him to do? That offense was doomed. It's absolutely doomed last year. So now you get a legit playmaker and Malik Neighbors, who literally in any other wide receiver class, except for maybe the 2021 class where Jamar Chase was the wide receiver one, Malik Neighbors is the wide receiver one in almost any other draft class of the last 5 years. Sure, the landing spot isn't as prime as Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, but the talent is there from Malik Neighbors. Let's not over penalize him for the landing spot. This is one where I think if you liked Malik Neighbor, the prospect, which very clearly everybody did, he was basically locked in as the wide receiver 2 in this class, the talent will be fine. Brian Dable will make it work. Let's keep faith in what Brian Dable can do with this offense. Now, these last 3 get interesting. Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Drake London. Mostly because I think we kind of know what Jalen Waddle and Chris Olave are. I want to spend the most time on Drake London because he is in the most unique situation. Waddle is the second fiddle to Tyreek Hill in a boom-bust offense, but the massive is upside, right? Case closed there. Chris Olave, he's stuck with Derek Carr in a middling offense, but clearly the alpha. Case closed there. Drake London, all right. Talk about grossness for a 2023 season, right? He has yet to finish as the wide receiver 30 or better in PPR formats. He has averaged only 113 targets per season in his first 2 years in the league. And his yards per route run number dipped from 11th best to 34th best. He went from a top 5 target share to a 23% target share last year, which was 25th in the league. Everything has changed now, right? Everything has changed now. Arthur Smith, see a bye out of town. Kirk Cousins, oh, finally, competent quarterback play. Been waiting for this. The excuses are eliminated. They're gone. So now it's about calling your shot. Do you believe in Drake London, the talent? Or is he barely going to break the top 30 wide receivers again this year with Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, and Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles tear? I'm willing to take a bet on the talent because I believe in the prospect, the talent that Drake London was. But if you're skeptical, any capacity, like stay away. Stay away. Because there are still plenty of reasons to be wary. And those reasons do have their validity. All depends on how you want to rank Drake London. I have Drake London ahead of Chris Olave for sure. I can pull up my dynasty rankings right here. I'm going to have an answer for you in literally 2 seconds. I have Drake London as my wide receiver 12, ahead of Chris Olave, but behind Malik Neighbors and Jalen Waddle. So this is fairly accurate of what my dynasty ranking showed. But again, consensus for all 3 fellas. I think Drake London does belong in this tier, despite the grossness of his first 2 years in the league. All right, so the C tier is a fascinating one. Because you got Brandon Aiyuk, Michael Pittman Jr., Rome Odunze, Tee Higgins, Devonta Smith. Now, I'm going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk and Tee Higgins in the same grouping here. Because let's be real, their situations are closer to identical than not. These are 2 guys who may or may not be on their same teams by the time this video is out. Let's just be honest. As I'm recording this Wednesday afternoon, 2 o'clock p.m., a trade could drop for either of them at any point. But starting with Brandon Aiyuk, he had the big breakout last year, right? 7th most receiving yards, over 1,300 yards. He was 3rd in yards per route run, 2nd in first downs per route run. But he did all of that while being 30th in targets with 105. That's it. Less than Drake London. 24th in receptions with 75. 53rd in routes run with 422. Now, he only played 16 games, but let's not act like that 53rd number would jump up to a top 20 number. Let's not kid ourselves there. And I get this is a special offense in San Francisco, but what if Aiyuk gets traded? Does he see the efficiency still? Maybe he makes up for that by getting more volume, running more routes on the field. Does he see a higher target share? Like, it's a balancing act that has a decent amount of uncertainty. And you look at Tee Higgins, he's basically in the same boat, except his 2023 season was absolutely rotten too, right? He's coming off a dreadful year, not just personally, but again, the Bengals. The season was dreadful. There's a decent amount of concern around his injury history, right? Dude can't stay on the field. Yet both of these guys have the talent, the upside to elevate themselves into the B tier if they land in the right situations via trade. Or if you're Brandon Aiyuk, if Deebo Samuel gets traded and you stay in San Francisco, that's probably actually the most ideal for Brandon Aiyuk. So these guys both belong in the C tier. You can make the argument Aiyuk belongs up in the B tier. I would listen to it, but frankly, their situations are too similar. There's just too much uncertainty around what their future is that I'm just going to keep them in the C tier, value them relatively the same, even though I do think Brandon Aiyuk has more upside. Now, Michael Pittman Jr., talk about like not upside, right? He is the definition of a wonderful floor asset in Dynasty, right? Only 5 games out of 16 last year did he score less than 13 fantasy points. So in 11 of 16 games last year, Michael Pittman Jr. had at least 13 fantasy points. That is a phenomenal floor. The targets and receptions, they have linearly increased each of the last 3 seasons. Targets have gone up by 10 or 11 each year. Receptions have gone up by 10 or 11 as well. And he's going to continue to be the reliable option, just totally consistent, reliable option for Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen. Michael Pittman can't score a touchdown to save his life, though, all right? 6-4-4 each of the last 3 seasons. You throw A.D. Mitchell into the mix now, too, where I think he might be the better threat around the goal line. JT, Anthony Richardson, if you're getting that close, you may as well run it in with either of those two. So Michael Pittman Jr., he is a safe dynasty option, but he is like the poster child of a C-tier dynasty wide receiver because you can count on 12 to 16 fantasy points every single week, but he is seldomly going to give you 20 plus. Let's move on to Rome. Rome, again, 3rd rook on this list. Spoiler alert, he will be the final rookie on this list, but the talent is there. Again, like Malik Neighbors, in recent classes, he is arguably the wide receiver 1. He's just stuck behind both DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. The talent is there. You pair him with Caleb Williams now, right? Like Caleb Williams and Rome could actually be a scary combo in years to come. But that's what keeps Rome in the C tier. The talent, the potential is there, but you really can't put him any higher than this. And frankly, if you wanted to put Rome in the D tier, I really wouldn't blame you, but I'll let you be the judge of that once we get there. Devonta Smith, though. All right. This is the one Eagles fans have probably been waiting for because I am ready for them to come at my life in the comments. All right. I get it. I'm used to it. Ain't nothing new around these parts. Nothing new under the sun. In the first 9 games of 2023 with Dallas Goedert, 4 games as a top 20 wide receiver, 4 games outside of the top 40 wide receivers. The one game in between there, he's the wide receiver 24. So if you want to throw that in, 4 games as a top 25 wide receiver, I'll give it to you. You look at weeks 14 to 17 with Goddard. Remember, Goddard went out between weeks 10 and 13 there, dealing with an injury. But when he came back in week 14, played 4 games with Devonta Smith at the end of the season. Devonta Smith had 1 finish inside of the top 20 wide receivers and 3 finishes outside of the top 40 wide receivers. I know things have changed. The Eagles are running such an unimaginably horrible offense last year. And Kellen Moore, improvement. No question asked. He is an improvement. But I just can't ignore the history when it tells me that when A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Devonta Smith are all out on the field, he is consistently inconsistent. And he is definitely a tier 2 below these upper echelon wide receivers. I get if you want to try and put him in the same conversation as a Jalen Waddle, a Chris Olave, a Drake London. I got to have that consistency first, though. I just do. Because when those 3 are all out on the field together, I don't know which Devonta Smith I'm going to get on a given week. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and wrap it up with the D tier here. Only 2 guys, DJ Moore, Nico Collins. And frankly, these dudes are so similar. I'm just going to draw the similarities and you'll understand why exactly they're in the D tier. 2 guys who both outproduced expectations last year, flashed incredible upside last year. They both have a young stud and a higher quality vet playing alongside them. Both could be significantly higher in these rankings if their teams didn't trade for savvy vets in the offseason. Both could be wide receiver 2s at absolute best. And I would even say will be wide receiver 2s at absolute best. DJ Moore with Keenan Allen and Rome, I'm sorry. And with Caleb Williams is not going to come in and break literally NFL record possible. I see all these freaking posts All three of them, 1,000 yards. It ain't going to happen. It's not. That's not how this works. Rookie quarterbacks, they don't come in and throw for 4,500 yards their first year in the league, unless if your name is CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert. It just doesn't happen. We can't make CJ Stroud and Justin Herbert the absolute norm for rookie quarterbacks, because automatically we are setting them up to fail when they don't meet that expectation. These guys all aren't going to have 1,000 receiving yards this year. Now, obviously, you look at Houston, that's like throw a dart at which one you want on your team. Nico, more healthy than Tank. Tank coming off of that leg injury, obviously. I think some people are a little bit more concerned about that than I am. But again, same situation. You got Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell there. Not all these dudes can feast at an elite level. Somebody's going to siphon from somebody on a given week. It's going to end up being a headache. But you can obviously tell why DJ Moore and Nico Collins are all in the same tier. All right, that's it. Our top 20 Dynasty wide receiver rankings placed into tiers. If you enjoyed the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications as well. You will be alerted of the 2 YouTube videos, the 2 podcasts, and the abundance of shorts we have coming out for you starting last week until the end of the 2025 regular season. That's our schedule going forward. We'll wrap up with Dynasty tight end rankings next week. We got some best ball content over on Underdog Fantasy coming out for you all as well. So again, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notifications for those as well. Totally see you next time. Stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.